We perceive and judge in a completely different way than we've been told for at least 400 years.
Right, and feelings of data. We're in the emotional recognition game, not the technical pattern game.
They got to start by being honest with themselves. And then can you say, do I really believe that's the way it works?
Intuition is experience, right? Recognizing things. Sometimes early impulsivity is a much stronger feeling than intuition.
There's a paradox in this moment of discovering intuition and comparing it to impulse.
Great traders can feel their heart rates.
I think of it as a cycle of confidence where, initially we're trepidatious, nervous, scared. So we take most of the trades that our system says or style says.
All of trading psychology is control your emotions, control your emotions, control your emotions. Aside from all the other things that are wrong with it, it's a logical fallacy.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It's great to see you guys here once again for our next event presentation. We're really excited to be shaking things up a little bit and hosting a fireside chat on trading psychology and performance with members of the Rethink Group. We're really excited to have them, Denise Shull, John Burns, and Evan Marks. And if you're not familiar with the Rethink Group, they work with institutional traders, professional athletes, as well as other high performers to work on decision-making as well as improve results. So thank you guys all for being here. And I'm excited for this. Thanks so much for being a part of this.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Happy to be here.
Great. And to start things off, Denise, I know you wanted to cover this. I think it's a great place to kind of open things up. How has your understanding of trading / risk perception changed over time? Big question.
Yeah, well, back when I first started trading, whatever year that was, 1994, I unexpectedly fell in love with it. I didn't realize how psychological it was. I was like sort of searching for like the system. I worked in a shop that was kind of mean reverting, buy a value stock, expect it to go to like its resistance, That didn't actually really make sense to me watching markets because I would notice that groups would move together. So I spent all kinds of time reading, all the psychology books back then. I used to laugh at myself. I was single and 30, and I would go home and read trading psychology books on Friday night instead of going out. But there was something about it that never, I was like, is it me? Like, that just didn't completely jive. Well, it's a long story that I won't go into, but randomly I ended up being in a position to find out that the latest research, and by this time it's 2003 or so, had shown we cannot make decisions without emotion. And I was like, well, damn. Every single paragraph I read that said take the emotion out of it was actually technically wrong because number one, you can, and number two, if you could, you couldn't decide. So fast forward 20 years, now it's not just that we don't decide on our analysis, we decide on how we feel about our analysis. We really decide on how we're going to expect to feel as our predictions play out. So what that means in broad terms, you're looking at a trade, you're thinking, it matches your criteria, you should take it. What you're really doing is saying, I think I will feel safe and be happy and be pleased in the future. Mm-hmm. Once you start to understand that is human perception and judgment. I expect to feel safe or unsafe, good or bad, and then all sorts of obviously more nuanced feelings in the future. You start to be able to do amazing things with human beings because you're actually working with the system the way it actually works. And forgive me for this grandiose comment, but I've made it a million times and I'll make it again. I feel like it's as big a change as when most people thought the earth was flat and figured out it was round and that they could sail around it. So therefore they could find places and ultimately get back home. It's that level of change. Mm-hmm. We think, perceive, and judge in a completely different way than we've been told for at least 400 years and probably more like 4,000 years.
Yeah, very cool.
And on that note.
No, that's excellent. And John and Evan, I want to bring you guys both into the mix and talk about, your guys' journey to understanding and working with trading psychology. I understand that you're both professional traders and former and currently working as consultants. How did you guys get involved with this and how has it kind of changed your perception about trading? And John, we'll start with you. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I started looking at mental skills really to help my golf game initially. And so I read a lot of stuff about mental skills, and a person that worked with Evan Arkiev and Bob Rotella. He's a golf guy, and I read all sorts of books about mental performance. And that kind of brought me into the realm of looking at trading mental performance. And that's how I found Denise. And so I started listening to webinars back when Denise did webinars, and then worked with Denise in a one-on-one setting for a while, and some groups as well, way back when. And it started to become obvious to me that I was really good at using my anger on the trading floor. And when I started to kind of transition off the trading floor, and actually in golf as well, it turns out it doesn't work as well, because there's this idea that, if you slam your club and say profanity on the golf course, people look at you a little bit differently. On the trading floor, it was like you kind of looked and normal, like, all right, what's wrong with this guy? Yeah. Let's move on. And so that judgment, guilt that I felt made me less able to use this idea of letting feelings flow through me. And so as I started to understand that, my trading started to develop and change. I started to notice patterns of thoughts and behavior. I started to understand that I had this intuitive side that Denise helped me cultivate and actually pointed out to me over time. And so again, I love this stuff. I could talk about this stuff forever. But I'll kind of wrap it up there.
Yeah, that's great.
I was a Division I athlete. And so, the mental side of sports was huge, right? If you were scared, weakness. If you were nervous, it would show on the field. All these incredible things, but that's how we trained. I started in Wall Street, ironically, in 94. And I was blessed with having some great coaches. One of them at that time was Ari Kiev, right? And obviously what Denise does, what didn't exist really. So, we had a philosophy of do the work, get bigger, and get paid. That was it. The more you worked, the more money you ran, the better you do. So that was it. That was the philosophy back then. Everybody, from Steve Cohen used them, to then we used them, and everybody did it. So obviously it's going to work. But what happened over, I spent about managing money for about 25 plus years on Wall Street. Even though my performance was pretty good, there was something missing. Like I would repeat the same mistakes. I'm like, where's that coming from? And so finally, obviously I was in some sort of pickle. I said, I have to go down a different route. So somebody recommended Denise Shull. And the first question she asked me, and obviously I was in a hole, she goes, well, how are you feeling? What kind of feelings does that mean? Like, what does it bring up? I go, what? I said, I don't have time for this. We got to start rocking and rolling immediately. And then as we started to, discuss things, when I played sports in college, I blew up my knees twice and I couldn't perform like I used to. And I had an identical twin brother who became captain. And I'm like, hey, whatever, it happens. Or the way I was raised, I didn't really think about it because I didn't think it really mattered, but it did. So as we started discussing things, I was obviously extremely uncomfortable talking about this. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, maybe this makes sense. Maybe this path is the path. And obviously got out of the hole, so I became a huge believer. But I realized though, as things were getting better and my progress was there, I realized I had to double up on this. That this wasn't a one-off. This actually meant something. So Denise and I worked for a long time, and I was on trading floors on my whole career. And then I remember being with my brother in Italy, and I'm like, Steve, I'm done. He said, what are you done? I'm done with trading. He goes, what are you talking about? You're doing well. I said, I said, I'm telling you, this Denise Shull lady is onto something. And this is my next stage in life. So I sold my fund in 2017, and I started coaching. I've never been more afraid in my life. Failure. And Denise like, well, it's all right to feel failure, to feel nervous and scared. I go, that's right, it is. And so now I think it's been 5 years. Obviously, it's an incredible journey of mine, and I've enjoyed it, and I enjoy it tremendously. But what happens is when we use the Shull method, and what obviously Denise has taught us, and we've gone back to school, and we've done this, that, people's eyes in the beginning are like everybody's skeptical. But when it starts to
Click.
connect,
Yeah.
it's such a different thing where people could be honest with themselves and actually say how they feel. And what happens is the behavior starts to change, right? Behavior changes before feelings, and then it starts to click. Even if you're 30, 40, 50, it's a new way to look at things. And it isn't, I mean, obviously I'm going to say it's incredible because I love what I do, but it really was just this shift. And when I would deal with clients around the world, and like you said, athletes and CEOs and Wall Street, the common denominator is feelings. Like these guys all make high risk decisions in all these different industries and obviously sports. And when it does connect, I mean, it's incredible, right? And that's what we do. So it is pretty awesome.
Yeah, perfect. And
I obviously love it.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And you mentioned there, first coming to Denise and starting to learn and ask those questions. What does a new client experience kind of look like? What are the first questions that you ask them to try to dive deeper and get into their feelings and help them understand it? And what are the first maybe few exercises that you have them go through to try to dive deeper and understand how they're feeling and try to start the process of learning to experience that? And we can start with anybody, but if anybody wants to jump in, you can go ahead.
I'll start.
Yeah,
I literally had a new client 2 hours ago. Now, this is a person in a firm that I've worked with for 4 years. But I said, hey, I hate to do this to you because it's not an interview, but I'm going to ask you that, like, tell me about yourself question. Now, some people, tell you they started this job 6 months ago and before they were at Citadel, and that's all. And I live in New York City. This person started with when I was 5. So that was actually super interesting. And then in this case, I said, not knowing if they knew what they were getting into, because most people call us. So they've heard us speak. So they've heard us talk about, you're going to talk about your emotions. We're going to try to make your unconscious conscious. But someone like this who was assigned to, I started to talk about, you don't make decisions on the analysis. You make decisions on how you feel about the analysis. And this was a long short equity person. So they use conviction. Conviction is a feeling. I'm like, how do you think about conviction? What is it? So they couldn't answer that question, which is so funny. I find that so often, a word that is constantly used, people who use it can't really define it or describe it. So, I went through you're predicting a future feeling. And so then they said, it all makes sense to me intuitively, but I can't figure out how to apply it. And I said, well, tell me a stock you're thinking about. So we just went through this stock that they are very convinced on a long-term fundamental basis, but it actually is a very recession or not recession oriented stock. So while they're typically long short equity and not thinking about the global macro environment, in this case, they need to make this decision on the global macro environment. Is the US going into recession or not? What are interest rates doing in the US? So then we started to work through I said, well, I think that sounds like you're worried. So I put the feeling word, I gave them the feeling word. Mm-hmm. And so then I asked, was that, are you just doubtful? Or I don't think you're panicked, but I tried to offer up possible emotions to see if, and they were like, yeah, that's exactly right. I said, so on one hand, you're confident, convicted, and on the other hand, you're worried. And the trick is you have to decide which one you're going to act on or gain the ability to just tolerate both and wait. And so then when we hung up, they were like, yeah, this makes complete sense. And they could see that they had this confidence, but they don't have the confidence in the recession data to actually make the decision. And the irony of them seeing that they were afraid and conflicted is they're more comfortable waiting. Where before it was one day I should do it, next day I shouldn't, you're back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and you're not really sure because you're trying to analyze the data. You're not looking at what your feelings are telling you. So then I left them with the homework of write down all the emotions they can think of trading and investing, which is a piece of homework I often give.
Yeah, I was going to ask, it seems like it's really important to give them the vocabulary to the worry versus confident. And yeah, how important is it to give them that language to be able to express how they're feeling? It seems like that's pretty essential.
Well, I'll let John and Evan jump in a moment, but let me just say, the overall skill is called emotion differentiation and emotion granularity. Differentiation means you can tell the difference between like fear and frustration. Granularity is you can tell the difference between doubtful and panicked, in the category of fear, or annoyed or enraged. There's all kinds of research showing that the greater your ability to differentiate emotions and to be granular improves your decision making, particularly in markets. Like, people find that shocking, but I tell my professional portfolio managers all the time, because I end up quoting this: the more a portfolio manager can differentiate amongst their negative emotions, the higher their returns. That's a quote from a study. So they're like, wow, really the exact opposite they've been taught, right? Set all that aside. So I'm John and Evan, I don't know, John and Evan, while they work the Shull method and work for Rethink, everybody's got their own style. So they don't necessarily start out with a client exactly like I do.
I generally do. I ask about their history, because again, they come to us understanding that emotions and history are part of what we do. And same thing, some people tell you a lot, some people tell you a little, but to us, it's information about, okay, this is really interesting. And the other thing that we do is the feelings and thoughts that come up when a client is explaining things to us is, again, more information for us to kind of develop questions from. And so the frame I kind of think about it generally in is that I'm listening for patterns of thoughts and behavior to kind of have areas to focus on. And then once we find those areas, ask questions to try to get the kind of granularity and differentiation in the language in there. Some people are really ready for it. Some people are not ready for it. So the people who aren't ready for it, we talk about thoughts a lot. And eventually the feelings start to seep their way in naturally when they're ready. I found in my experience that if I push on that, like sometimes I get super excited when somebody's explaining stuff and they're really doing a good job, and I lean into it, that sometimes isn't the right approach. And so again, it's about the back and forth with the client, trying to help them clarify what they think about the market based on their beliefs, perceptions from the past and the present, and understanding that those are components of the prediction for the future. And so, again, some of the homework, I like the homework of cultivating the intuition. And so one of the things that I ask my clients to do is, hey, those random thoughts, collect those. Because I believe over time a pattern emerges if we collect them. And like intuition, a random thought, which I think is kind of an intuitive thing, kind of dissipates. It's like a breeze. It kind of goes away. If we grab onto it, we can get it. It's almost like a dream. For those of us who have dreams, we all have dreams, but I don't remember them very well. So, that dream that you have and it's on the tip of your tongue, but you can't really get it. But if you think about it right when you wake up and write it down, it's yours. I believe these random thoughts have the same effect. And so that's why I like to assign that's one of the homeworks I assign.
And just a follow-up question before Evan, sorry. So these random thoughts, is that when you're looking through charts and trying to find trades and analyzing stuff you've done? When would you collect those random thoughts?
Typically when you're brushing your teeth, taking a shower, walking the dog,
Anytime.
Yes, but usually anytime when you're away. The thoughts that come up at the chart, when you're very accomplished, like those of us here are, there's information in that. I think initially, a lot of that's the grind of the impulse intuition battle. And so I think initially it's less helpful when you're looking at a chart, those feelings that come up, but away when for example, Denise, I had this experience with Denise. I was taking the train home and I said, I had this idea about the British pound, and I didn't trade the British pound that day. I traded the British pound fairly frequently, but I didn't that day or the previous weeks. And Denise said, maybe that means something. And so I thought about it. I thought, this is crazy. It's just guessing. And she said, well, maybe just track it. And sure enough, now, again, I wasn't in the trade, so I don't know about stops and everything, but I'm pretty realistic when I think about that stuff. So I went and looked and said, if I would have done X, I know what my risk level is. it would have been okay. Now, when do you get out? But my point is, she helped me realize that random thought meant something. And so then I started to say, I'm having a thought about X, maybe that means something as well. And again, it's this testing.
Yeah, perfect. And Evan, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. How do you kind of start off with clients, and are there any exercises that you'd like to do?
To start, Richard, when people come to us, they think it's about one leaf on the tree, and it's never about the leaf. They think it's about something. It's never about that.
Right.
So, it's our job to explore actually what are the roots, because we repeat we repeat experience and we think they're different, but they're the same experience. Maybe they look different, but they're not. So usually my first question is, why now? Why are you coming to coaching now? And it's a beautiful open-ended question, because they get to think and it starts a conversation.
Right.
A lot of the times, I think Nick, we're not in a positive psychology camp. We're in the camp that negative emotions have intensity and power. So when we say, I don't want to feel angry, I don't want to have rage, I don't want to feel nervous, my question, why not? What's wrong with those? What do you mean? I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to feel ashamed. Why not? I said, those are good feelings. And usually people are like, what are you talking about? You remember, like, when we have anger and rage and nervousness and doubt, when I speak to them, those are phenomenal feelings. The question is, how do we use them? Right? We all have felt ashamed, embarrassed, angry, or whatever. Why are they negative? So once we understand that and give clients permission to feel any way they want. Remember, what we do is everybody builds their own personal dictionary. Rich, what nervous means to me may be different to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When I traded, nervousness was my key. And I loved that feeling. It was how I focused. So, over the course of a coaching, as we coach clients, giving people permission and not judging and let them explain themselves is a very freeing feeling. Modern psychoanalysis meets neuroscience. But when people feel heard and listened to, it develops that incredible relationship and trust with the coach. So through that, talking through things, we realize, often a lot of people know what to do, right? They've been successful. The question is, what's holding me back? And oftentimes they have no clue. And that's through questions and exploring that. And when that connects, obviously, it's a very crucial point, which is very positive. Research has shown that, I think it's a Harvard piece, that a lot of people come to us, they ask, when am I going to see results? And I say, I have no clue. It must drive them nuts. Because when we're outcome focused, result driven, it significantly diminishes our skill set, i.e. process. And I think once people start to understand that and believe it, and like I said, progress is elusive, but once they're able to do it, it's really incredible. So, a couple things I do, which is a little unorthodox, is most of my clients take cold showers in the morning. I've been doing it for 15 years. So people are like, what's it got to do with trading? I don't want to take a cold shower. What it does is it's doing something you don't want to do because it's uncomfortable. But what it is it's changing your behavior to do it. And we all know the neurological benefits and all these gorgeous things. And that's important. And the second exercise I have them do is pause. You're like, what do you mean I got to pause? Like Denise said earlier, our goal is to make the unconscious conscious. And oftentimes we have a trigger, the triggers are unconscious, and we immediately go to reaction and action. But in that middle is behavior, decision-making. You can call it freedom, present, whatever you want. But if you're able to pause, which is something that's conscious, and then able to decide for what's better for Evan, John, Richard, Denise, usually that outcome and that behavior is a choice that is for today, not from the past. And being able to train that, obviously the first thing is remembering to do it, and then pause. Just pause. That's an incredible skill set to build. So I often start with those sort of things because it's not, they haven't done it and it's very uncomfortable. And I love being uncomfortable, even as cliche as that sounds. But it starts to build something.
Mhm.
And that's kind of where I begin. Obviously, I want to know who my guys are, and I want to know my clients, guys and girls. And that's extremely important, and where they're starting from. That's how I start these things.
And those pauses, again, is that something that you'd recommend them do just kind of throughout the day, or is that also during the trading day, right before the open, right before they're going to have to make decisions, just kind of recenter themselves and, again, the right frame of mind?
But, everything we do is connected,
Mhm.
right? How you speak to your partner, how you react to your children, it all plays a role. It's not inconsequential. So if somebody comes at you or affects you emotionally, to pause and then make that decision. When you're trading, something's coming to a level and you're scared, like, I'm scared. Let me pause for a second. Right? That's invaluable, because it makes you, like we talk about, you're always, traders, that's why I like people standing up, always in fight or flight. Right? So we make decisions like that. Now, obviously, fight or flight's important when obviously saber-toothed tigers, and it's life or death. But to move your sympathetic to your parasympathetic, just to pause for a second, is a place to make incredible decisions that are advantageous to you. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah.
But yeah, pause
All
whenever
the
you want to
time
pause.
is his answer. All the time is his actual answer.
All the time.
Mhm.
Pausing is
Yeah.
awesome. Right? If you think about it, Richard, any situation, if you're able to pause and not be a slave to your feelings and emotions, but actually control, because we can't control feelings. We're going to feel the way we feel, but we sure as hell can control our behavior. And that's extremely important and extremely empowering. And that takes a lot of repetition.
That's actually the whole
Yeah.
thing in like all of trading psychology is control your emotions, control your emotions, control your emotions. It's literally, aside from all the other things that are wrong with it, it's a logical fallacy.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was first trading on a trading desk in Chicago, upstairs from the options exchange, I was reading all this control your emotions, control your emotions. I was in this training program, control your emotions, make these analytical, probabilistic decisions. And there was a guy in the office who had been covered in Forbes or Fortune during the 87 financial crisis, and he was day trading upstairs with me. And that guy would jump up and down, screaming, every four-letter word you can hear of all of the time. And he printed money.
Mhm.
There was a guy in front of me that made money scalping at that time, 8, but he didn't make anywhere near as much money as Steve. And I was like, Steve is like maybe the most emotional guy I've ever seen. So like, how does this fit together? The logic, you literally only have to control your actions. It didn't matter that Steve had all these passionate reactions every which way from Sunday. Like, he was making the choice that made him money most of the time. So his actions were controlled enough to make him a lot of money. He was wildly emotional. He still may be one of the most emotional people I've ever met. So there's just this fundamental logical fallacy that's not true. You have to control your behavior to help you get what you want. Now, it's neuroscientifically shown that if you could take the emotion out of it, you would not be able to make a decision. So, like, what's the point?
Right. Feelings have never lost you money. Behavior has, as we like to say. Pretty interesting.
And I believe everybody has a set level of arousal, a range at least. And so for me, I'm a little bit more excitable, even though I try to control my emotions and be more stoic. And so I realize that my go-to when I start to get nervous is either to be super intense, screaming and yelling, or super reserved. And so for me, neither one works. I need to find a level where I like Evan said, I like being nervous. I like being my hand shaking a little bit, my voice fluttering a little bit, my ears are red. Like, I know all of my physiological reactions for that kind of state where I'm ready to go to battle. And some people are more reserved and calm, and they have, a level set. If I'm a 7 to 9 on the 1 to 10 scale, some people are 2 to 4. And that's okay. We just need to understand that's individual fingerprint of kind of arousal. And like what was said by both Denise and Evan, that, it's not the emotion, the reaction to the emotion. It's letting the emotion flow through us, give us the information that it needs to give us, and try to make the best decision with that pause that Evan was talking about. So, yeah.
Right. And feelings are data. right? It's you know, like John said earlier, you know, we're in the emotional recognition game, not the technical pattern game. So these words mean something. So don't shelve them. I mean, this is data. Let's use it.
What I'm always saying to my clients is answer the question, what am I feeling and why am I feeling it? Now, it's an easy question for me to say, and it's an easy question for you to basically comprehend, then try to do it. It gets really hard to answer and then get the feeling that the answer is correct. Like the what, you know, is it frustration or disappointment? I spend a lot of time with professional hedge fund managers literally sorting through, well, no, it's like regret. Well, but no, I'm just kind of embarrassed. Well, no, I'm afraid that, like, you know, and like getting the what right. And then the why, which is usually, you think it's one thing and it's like 2 or 3 layers below it, really. And that 2 or 3 layers below is going to be some prediction about your future safety. And I use that word to encompass a lot of feelings like embarrassment, regret, proud of what you do, able to, you know. But it's a real skill. Like that's what I ask people to do. That's my pause, if you will. It's a skill to be able to do it. And I think it's like a playing golf skill. Like it's that sort of fine motor, like aware of where the club head is, what your hips are doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, and it takes, you just got to work it. But I will tell you this, like, because you're then working with the way the human brain really does work, it's easier than it's hard, but it's also easier than it sounds. Like if you're willing to change your opinion of your emotions and you're willing to find the accurate answers to those questions in your pause, like you will move forward because you've now are sailing around a world that curves. Like, and the curve's going to be there to support you. Like the way the brain works is going to be there to support you. So what you're going to find is you can tolerate anxiety in a trade way better than you could before. Mm-hmm. You can tolerate the combination of confidence and worry way better than you could before. So you're sure this is going to work. You're worried you're missing something. You think you should be bigger. You're always having trouble getting as big as you plan to get. You can just do it. You find that you can do it because you can lean on the confidence and tolerate the anxiety. When you understand that's what it is, and you have, to John's point, a bigger understanding of what your patterns are, like what tends to make you nervous, maybe where that comes from, which is usually someone's personal history. I mean, there's always things in the moment, but it always tracks back to your self-image. And at the end of the day, you're making decisions on your feelings about the market versus your feelings about yourself, because you know which feelings you have, where they're coming from. You've paused, you've done the work to talk about them and think about them outside of the market. You've gathered some ability to realize, wait, my intuition is information by tracking it over time.
And I think, Denise, what you said is so important. The skill of asking questions, right? How am I feeling? Why am I feeling nervous? Why am I trading? What am I trying to accomplish here? And that, you know, when we said pause, that's the pause also. Asking yourself a question. Stop being unconscious quickly. And it's just a question you ask yourself. And the skill set is ask, you know, my question could be different than John's, and Denise could be different than yours, Richard, whatever resonates with you. But asking that question, and I still do it, even though I'm not managing money actively, I manage my own, but I still do it. I still speak out loud. My kids probably think I'm schizophrenic, but it is what it is. But I still ask these questions. Mm-hmm. And it's important to do that.
Well, it's an introspective mindset. That's right. Really what we're talking about.
Exactly.
It's like, I mean, for me, it's my default. Anything happens to me and I'm like, okay, what exactly am I feeling and why am I feeling it? Like, and sometimes I struggle to actually figure it out, but it's like a mindset. I mean, to me, it's my meditative mindset where my default is to pause and try to understand what the feelings are and where they're coming from before I make a decision or before I take a choose. Markets or not markets. By the way, the flip side of this, the better you get at it, the more you know intuition or unconscious pattern recognition, just like that. You like look at some set of data in the markets that you know, that you're familiar with, and you can have those moments where you go, you know what, I know that's that, I'm putting the trade on. It might look impulsive to the outside person, but you've done all this work, you know, so it's akin to take the, you know, the basketball player taking the shot when they see they have the shot. Mm-hmm. Like maybe earlier than you would think they needed, you know, or earlier you would think that you needed, because you're able over time to calm down the irrelevant feelings about yourself and hold them. And that leaves you with more feelings of expertise.
Takes time.
It takes time.
Long
but
time.
Also, on the other hand, a lot of the professionals, so they've been successful enough in the market that they've been given a hedge fund to manage. When they say, if I ask them why now, to Evan's question, they'd say, well, I want to hone my intuition. You know, hedge fund manager after hedge fund manager after hedge fund manager from all the places you've heard of call up and say, I want to hone my intuition. Why? Like, why should a professional at that level? Because they know. I mean, Stanley Druckenmiller's a famous investor. A week or two ago, he said, if I have intuition, I put the trade on and then I do the work. Like, Druckenmiller's famous for, you know, his success. Mm-hmm. But you got to know what true intuition feels like. And you can only do that if you practice with the data set in some sort of organized way.
But I think what's also important, you know, for people just starting out, you know, trading and intuition, it is experience, right? Recognizing things. But I think we all know impulsivity well. You know, sometimes early impulsivity is a much stronger feeling than intuition. You know, people are chasing intuition, but you better know what impulsivity feels like. You know, knowing what not to do, kind of like intuition will start to come a little bit, exactly. Right? Because, you know, what is it? It's addition by subtraction. Impulsivity is a strong feeling. So being able, you know, like Denise says, if we get rid of 25% of those trades that didn't work, obviously quantitatively it works better. But impulsivity, you know, is a beautiful thing if you can pick up on it and just step back for a second, because we all have it, right? And then I think through the experience, intuition comes, but sometimes the first thing people who start out doing this have to understand what impulsivity feels like, of when not to make decisions.
Belabor this point a little bit more. I think that there's a paradox in this moment of discovering intuition and comparing it to impulse. And the paradox is that once we start to develop that impulse the intuitive feelings initially, I think of it in sound, like the sound and the feeling of the intuition increases to almost a similar level as the impulsive sound. It feels different, but it sounds the same. And so there's that paradox that I experienced of, what is it? What is it? What is it? And after I was wrong for a lot of times, I started to understand of, oh, okay, if I just, back to the pausing, if I just wait a second, the impulse will continue to nag me. I had this process where I would cycle through my charts, I would get an intuitive feel, and I would cycle through again, remember what market that was. And if the intuitive feel came back, I looked into it. And so it initially, for traders with not a lot of experience, this paradox is loud and could be dangerous. So I always put that caveat out there for this, because we all want that. We all want to be Stanley Druckenmiller, but most of us aren't. And so we have to be careful.
Well, a lot more of us are than realize, though. Like,
right,
the statistics on trading are as bad as they are because people have the wrong model of the brain.
True.
Exactly.
Impulses come from the fact that you're trying to do everything cognitively, where your brain is trying to use your feelings.
So true.
And so you try to use your brain to control those feelings, and your psyche is going to win. So then you do the thing you said you wouldn't do. You add to the loser, you hold on to the loser, because you're acting out this feeling that you think you're not supposed to have, that you don't know you have, that you're trying to control. So, like, literally the easiest way to start to control your impulsivity is to just listen to all your feelings. Because if you listen to them and put them into words, just the chances, if you know nothing else, the chances that you need to act out a feeling in an impulsive trade go down. And so then you don't take that, you might have taken 4 impulsive trades in a day and now you only take 1. Well, what do you do with the space and time of the 3 that you didn't take? You can see the market better. You're not working through the frustration of losing the money or being mad at yourself. Like, you're literally increasing your productivity just by putting the feeling into words instead of automatically doing it while you were trying to control it.
And you preserve mental capital.
Right. And we'll build it even, and then you start to be able to have more trust. But it's a skill. I mean, generally, intuition is like there's this sense of recognition. And impulsivity is this sense that you must do something in broad strokes. Impulsivity has some urgency. I got to do. And intuition is more like, oh, gee, I just know what's going on there. I may do or not do, but I do know what's going on.
Yeah, this is really great. And getting back to, the important thing is recognizing the emotions you're feeling, and going back of what John said a while ago about the physical manifestations of what he's feeling, noticing, he's like, his leg is going up and down, he's sweating a little bit. What, just as examples, what exercises can help people find the physical manifestations of the levels of emotions they're feeling and be able to represent it on a granular enough level that you're able to, segment out frustration versus anger, all those different things?
Deciding to pay attention, for one. Mm-hmm. Like, just have the courage to be honest with yourself. When I get nervous, my hands get sweaty.
Being okay with it.
Yeah, being okay with it.
Yeah.
I tweeted yesterday that, like, one of the secrets to transformation is to not judge your feelings. That wasn't exactly how I put it, but lots of times my tweets are a reaction to a client session. So this is a client I've been working with for just a couple of months, and they're getting the idea. Just put my feelings into words, think about just have my feelings. And so they were telling me about a situation where they had presented a stock to an investment company or investment committee. And then they were asked questions and they felt like they didn't answer the questions very well. And they were really, really beating themselves up. And they're like, they couldn't stop thinking about it. But when they described it, they're like, I put all the feelings into words, like I was mad at myself, I was embarrassed, like I was afraid they would think I was stupid, blah, 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 blah. But what they said was, and I was telling myself, that's ridiculous, they don't really care. Like, they were giving themselves all these reasons why they shouldn't have the feeling. They were using their cognition to denigrate, judge, dismiss the feeling. I'm like, that's where you went wrong. It went on way longer than it needed to because you didn't just accept the feeling, like maybe what you could have done differently.
I was just going to say, I have a sophomoric example of this that I had when I was going to play golf with some friends and some people I didn't know. And we were at a place that I love. And so I was excited to play the golf course with this guy who is an agent for some athletes. I was excited to play with him. And my hands were shaking. Literally, they were shaking on the putting green. And I said, hey, guys, look at this. My hands are shaking. Rather than try to hide it and say this is a meaningless round, which it was, but for whatever reason, my body was telling me I was nervous. And so my mind didn't quite get it. And so I just said, hey, look at me, I'm shaking. I don't know, this is kind of crazy. I'm really excited. And the agent guy said, yeah, before every baseball game I played, and he played through the minors, I was nervous before every game. And to me, that was like, I'm ready, rather than, oh shit, something's not right.
Mm-hmm. And to take
so it's notice. It's be willing to notice, Richard. To answer your original question, what's the exercise?
Yeah.
Be willing to notice, have the courage to admit you're nervous. Your heart's pounding, or your hands are sweating, or like your neck is getting tense. Like, it's okay.
And remember also, like, great traders can feel their heart rates. But often that somatic, visceral happens a little before those feelings, right? Because we go into fight or flight or whatever it may be. To be able to pick up on that, like I do this a lot, it just happens immediately. And I think I'm doing it now sometimes. But that meant something to me, like, ooh, what's going on here? Like Denise, I get sweaty. I'm a little sweaty now, but before I walked on here. But to pick up on that, and once again, it's the skill, right? Doesn't happen because we learned it on Wednesday, doesn't happen on Thursday. Don't get frustrated. But you're allowed to be frustrated because it's your feelings. But stick with it. It is just that somatic mental awareness. And obviously, like Richard, you said it, you could use it a lot of different places. It's not necessarily just trading. Everything is connected.
There's
Right? Trading is the
this
biggest self-development game in the world. Right?
definitely.
Sorry, Dave.
There's this cultural perception that our feelings and emotions are like left over from when we needed them, on the savannah or the saber-toothed tiger or whatever. And like we don't actually really need them in the modern world, but we're stuck with them. It's not true. They literally are our source of power, our source of information. And the problem is that they have just been misunderstood for millennia. Like if everyone had been taught properly, we'd have an entirely different world. Like,
Richard,
but
now
in the meantime,
talk about this forever.
In the meantime, so what does that mean? It's an available edge to people who are willing to tackle it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually easier and way less annoying than do these 19 things. But if you didn't do these 19 things, like, blah, 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 blah. There are plenty of people who do the 19 things and then blow their account up one day, and then come back and are okay for some period of time. And then one day blow their account up. Like in some ways, I mean, besides my own trading development, the guy that got me into trading was a phenomenal trader, but he had that pattern. He blew himself up once in the 80s, took him off the floor. He got back, went on and on and on. And I remember saying, this was 1993 or something, you lost $432,000 in an hour. Like I couldn't even comprehend, but I always had this other interest beside. I'm like, how did that happen? Like, how can he be that good and then do that one afternoon? Well, he was acting out, severe frustration for reasons of proving himself. But I guess I kind of knew that then because I already had a master's degree in neuropsychoanalysis, but I still didn't get why like his discipline would completely fail.
Right.
It's because discipline's not the answer. It's not irrelevant, but it's not the answer it's purported to be.
Why did he keep repeating it? Right? Which is interesting.
Yeah, the pattern that I see oftentimes is that the next time they come back, there's rather than 21 rules, there are 24 rules. And then if they get to some point where the blow up starts to happen when there are no rules. And it's interesting, this kind of cycle. I think of it as a cycle of confidence where, initially we're kind of trepidatious, nervous, scared. So we take most of the trades that our system says or style says, but we're really picky. And then the confidence starts to go, then we're taking all of them. And then things are really starting to roll. And then there's this feeling of, well, that's close enough. I'm going to move my stop this time. And then the cycle starts to slump. And then we reevaluate, come back down to the bottom of, all right, I just need more rules. And then
more sticky notes on the computer.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there you go. Evan and I have both been there, and I know Denise has too. But yeah,
take them all off. Put new ones on.
Right. Yeah.
What am I feeling, and why is a much more efficient system.
And then you only need one sticky note.
Perfect.
It ends up answering all sorts of, leading to the solution to all sorts of problems that we try to address through cognition and discipline and rules and sticky notes.
For sure. And when I poll people to ask what to talk about with you guys, I think 50% almost of the replies back mentioned confidence, whether it's overconfidence or lack of confidence. Could you guys talk about, where the feeling, emotion of confidence comes from and how traders can work to improve it and just overcome their difficulties with that emotion and how it affects them?
Yeah, let me start. And then, of course, let John and Evan with their more practical. Like at first, it's, do you actually believe you have a lens like glasses that tells you something about the market? Oftentimes people don't really believe that. they've learned from you or from someone, but they have in their mind, like, is this really the best way to do it?
Right.
So they try to do what they may have learned from you, but they're not actually sure that that's the way they should be doing it. And so that conflict comes into play. Mm-hmm. So there's like, get confidence in the way you see the market. Understand there's a million ways to see it. You just need to figure out what yours is, right, and stick with it. And then work it little by little, like you would a sport. So like now that I live in a ski town, my example is always like the steeper, harder, black to double black to, off-piste slopes. It's like I do a little bit of the harder slope. I'm terrified, but it doesn't go so badly. And then what? I feel like I can do it better the next time, like deliberate practice. In other words, taking your method, deciding, do you really believe in it? And then like, what do you need to do to affect it? And then having different strategies for the fear, anxiety in the moment, because it's not going to go away. It's just, you're going to act on the confidence about the trade based on your work, developing the trade, your work, analyzing, do you believe even in the trading, in that lens of the market? I'll let John and Evan jump in.
Yeah. So for me, I think of obviously what Denise says is fantastic. And I agree with that. The thought that was coming into my mind is this idea of, having a system or style that is aligned with your beliefs. And so when I was going from on the floor to off the floor, it struck me that there are an infinite number of ways to make money. I was really having trouble finding the one for me. And so over time, I was able to kind of say, all right, these are the types, like right now, this type of market I hate. So I've learned over time that, all right, I still need to take some spots in this type of market, but I need to be very choosy, and so for me, the confidence of understanding my personality and how I trade markets, my beliefs in how I trade markets, what markets are better for me than other markets, and being able to have that gives me confidence. Now, I think Evan or somebody said earlier about results. If your confidence are based on results, we're going to have problems because, I had a system that was 70% winners, but I had losers that were big. And so even in a system where you're making profitable trades in that number, the confidence of having 3 losers in a row, if it's just based on results, you have those 3 losers in a row, confidence goes down. So for me, it's more about aligning my beliefs with the markets and the process. I think Evan said process before, and that it's hard to do. It takes time to get there, but I think that's where professionals in any endeavor get their confidence. Yeah.
Sorry, John.
Yeah, go.
Confidence is repetition, right? And confidence doesn't mean you have to be in drive all the time. When you start, confidence is a choice, it's a behavior, right? It is that repetition. I tell my clients, you can go into neutral and gain confidence because it was a choice. Like, we don't always have to be in drive. But the confidence comes from that I could downshift into neutral because I know how to go back into drive. Right. And understanding that, and it is repetition, overconfidence is dangerous, right? Because overconfidence could be euphoria. Like, I'm better than this. And that's a dangerous place to make decisions. But confidence is experience and repetition and consistency. When do people get confident? No clue. But I tell you, you have to go slow to speed up. And that's an important thing. Chasing confidence is difficult because that's a result. But embodying it and going through repetition, it builds. And
what gives you the feeling that you can do something, that you can handle something. And I mean, in short, because I know we're getting short on time, like if you come up with better strategies for the opposite of confidence, it's like you've neutralized the conflict and it's easier for the confidence to come through. If you have better ways to handle your fear, basically, more brain-based ways, like fear in its pure form is trying to help you. Okay, let me sort it out, or at least let me hold it. If it's just, about I'm going to lose money. It allows your confidence from that deliberate experience, from that repetition to come through. Like, you can't expect to just have it go away. It's what's a better strategy for dealing with fear, which then allows the confidence to be there.
And it goes full circle. Like when we started, confidence could be also that I could feel my feelings and understand, but I get to pick my own behavior.
Yeah.
That's a very confident feeling. A lot of these discussions, always go full circle, and that's the beauty of it. But that's a big part of it, and it's interesting. That's how we opened up.
Yeah, perfect. And just one last main question. A lot of the there's probably a wide range of styles as well as experience levels watching this, from very new traders to maybe more experienced ones. How should they combine developing their system and finding one that, John, I think, as you said, works for them and their style and their process, as well as working on the mental side of things and try to develop that edge of knowing what emotions they're experiencing? How should they combine and maybe even know what the issues are, whether they're with the mental side of trading versus their actual system that they've chosen to work with?
They got to start by being honest with themselves. Like, can you describe a trade that works on a Saturday afternoon, like, now that it's summertime in the US, sitting with your feet up on a picnic table having a beer? Can you explain, like, this and this comes together and then the price moves in this way, like outside of staring at the chart? And then can you say, do I really believe that's like the way it works? Like, for me, that was momentum versus mean reversion, or,
Right.
Short-term momentum. Like, I'm sorry, these stocks move together like that. It happens like that. Makes sense to me. Or things that are extended. So you got to start there. And then by definition, if you're doing that, you're working with your feelings. So you're working with psychology. Like, I will tell my clients, what do I really think? How much do I believe it? Are their first two questions. So you got to do that about your lens for the market. What do I really think? And by the way, what do I really think allows you to hear that, you want this to happen, but it's not really happening. And then the do I believe it is the same question, but not really. Like, you're separating desire from pattern recognition.
And also, don't be a strategy junkie, jumping around from strategy to strategy. You're gonna bring the same luggage into every strategy. If you don't understand your mental game and how you feel and how you operate, it doesn't matter what strategy. And the good thing is that once you do understand, picking a strategy becomes clearer, not easy, but clear. But you're jumping from strategy to strategy. You're getting no data from how you feel, right? Stay with one for a little bit, but work on your mental game, because the answer, like when people read self-help books, on the 90th self-help book, I'm sure the first one said the exact same thing, right? But you have to do it. And that's the important part. You have to pick up on this data. And it's tough when you keep switching and switching and switching, because there is no holy grail, right? The most important part, obviously, when people say 95% of traders lose money because the markets are hard, come on, because they don't understand themselves, right? Markets are always uncertain. Right. So the 95%, I'm willing to say, I don't know if I can quantify it, but the mental performance has got to be 85, 90% of it.
And like to dovetail on both of those statements is that when we can explain our system or style, our confluence of events for a trade away from the screen succinctly, I think then we really understand it. And as simple as possible, right? What is it? Occam's razor. As simple as possible is better. We all want to feel, well, I should say, only speak for myself. I like feeling smart. So I like a chart that has 5,000 things on it because it makes me feel really smart. But I know that the important things are probably 2 or 3. And then kind of to Evan's point, the idea of Van Tharp had this idea that you needed to be able to trade a system 90% of the time according to your rules. And to Evan's point, like, if you're jumping around all the time, it's not the system. It's because there's something about the system or trading in general that is tough to take on a feeling emotional level.
Mhm.
And we're trying to kind of move the next thing to alleviate that. Oh, I just need to eat more protein. I just need to eat more vegetables. I just need to eat less hours during the day. All of those are probably true, but why do I keep switching? And so that's the important question.
People switch to assuage anxiety as opposed to dealing directly with the anxiety.
Yes.
Exactly.
Perfect. Yeah, this has been fantastic. I don't know if I quite feel smart enough for this conversation, but I know I've taken away some really great things. I think a great way to kind of wrap things up is for each of you, would you be able to kind of give your maybe one or two key takeaways that you hope people got out of this conversation, and maybe a recommendation for how to progress their mental game? And we'll start the reverse orders with Evan this time.
I'll go to my number with one thing is pause. And remember, slow and steady wins the race, which I can't stand that line. I wish they burn it. But you have to go slow to speed up. In order to progress, if you can go slow, the progression's quicker. But remember that. And at the same thing, at the end of the day, just be kind to yourself. Just be compassionate to yourself, because trading obviously doesn't get easier, but it gets rewarding, and there could be harmony in it. I used to tell clients there's no peace in trading, which is total crap. Like, if you could find that harmony, it is very rewarding. So that it could be harmony in this, and there is. It just takes a lot of effort and awareness.
Perfect.
Yeah. So know your feelings, understand your biases, understand your patterns, and kind of to Evan's point, it's okay to be you.
The research shows that the best traders are reading other people. Reading other people is a skill every human being has. You have to have it. The statistics are so bad because people have this flat earth view of perception and judgment. So if you understand that you already have a skill that will help you trade naturally, it's called theory of mind, and that your feelings and emotions are meant to help you, at least in their pure form, and you decide you're going to take them on in a different way, then basically everybody else is going to tell you to. The chances that you succeed at this are going to improve.
Excellent. Well, again, this has really been fantastic. For the viewers out there who want to learn more from you guys and learn more about the Shull method, where can they reach out to you guys and get that additional education?
Yeah. So the website is the rethinkgroup.net. We obviously have a contact us. That's the simplest way to get in touch with us. We do have an e-learning program that lays all this out at a relatively inexpensive cost, that you also get access to us live once a month. And then, through the website, people talk to my partner and husband, Bill, about picking which coach might work best for them. Sign up for the newsletter, but we're kind of not so great about getting them out on any regular basis.
Perfect. Well, thank you all once again, Denise, John, Evan. Thank you very much. I learned a lot from this. To everybody watching, I hope you enjoyed. I'm sure you did. If you did, please go ahead and leave a like down below, and make sure to subscribe as well to our channel. And with that, we'll move on to the rest of the program. Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Richard.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.